So what we've got to do now is put all the things we've learned so far together into a study technique which makes study easy and enjoyable. Now, just before we start that, if I say to you, study, what kind of words immediately come into your mind? Study books. Books. What else? Work hard. Homework. Don't want to do it. Tired. Boring. Stupid. Right? And that is human knowledge. Right? Our brain and all the books and what most people around the world think of as boring, yuck, horrible, tired, fail, exams, so on and so forth. And the only reason we think that is because study is hard. And what we're going to do in this whole session is make it easy and enjoyable. And to start off, I want to show you a very common human character known in every country on the planet, and that's the enthusiastic 6 o'clock in the evening studier who's going to study until 12 at night. And they come to the desk at 6 o'clock, and the desk is usually a disaster like this, right, a mess all over the place. So the first thing they do is start to sort it out, pile all the books that they still haven't read, get them into some kind of neat pile, get the notepads ready, get the books more organized, get all the writing materials ready. And when they've organized it all, they organize it again. Just those little final touches to make sure everything is perfect order. Which gives them just enough time to remember that when they were reading the newspaper in the morning or the comics or whatever, didn't quite finish them. Now, if you don't quite finish, what's it going to do to your concentration? Interrupt it. Break it. So you've got to get that out of the way before you really get down to study. So you go over and you take your newspaper and you try to finish it off. And you notice at this time in the evening, about 6:30, that it seems a bit more interesting than it was in the morning. And you do a more in-depth study. You notice how interesting all these news stories are. The comic page is good. The sports is great. So you have a real good old browse. And you always notice the television page. And you think, oh, had a hard day at school today. Worked hard in the office, worked hard in the home. Half an hour television program about, say, 9 o'clock would be a perfect break. Tony says you're supposed to break anyway. Memory's supposed to break. So take a half an hour break about 9 o'clock. So you look for that perfect half an hour television program. You always find it, and it always starts at 7 o'clock. And you think, well, I have worked hard today anyway. Looks kind of interesting. If I had a little break now, I'd be really rested, and then I'd be able to study. So you put your paper away. Sit down in front of the television, watch your program, and you're just about to turn the television off at 7:30. The next one starts. And you think, oh, that's a bit more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I'll just watch the first 5 or 10 minutes to see what it's like. So you watch the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, and it's a standard old program, and you think, well, maybe I should stop watching it now, but then you think, well, there's only 10 or 15 minutes to go anyway. And I've started watching it, so I may as well watch the end. So you watch the end feeling quite happy. 8 o'clock, big effort of will, you turn off the television, come back to the desk. This time you get back, and people do a really strange thing. They tap the book. Don't worry there, old buddy. Be with you sometime. But I just remembered. Got to phone my friend. I promised I would, can't break a promise, interfere my concentration, just go and phone my friend. So you go and phone the friend, you have a good old chat, talk about the day, talk about school, whatever you've been doing. It's now about 8:30, 8:45, and you're starting to feel just a little bit guilty. So what people do here is do what we call physical manifestations of determination, which means the body tells you that they mean to do it, right? So they kind of stride into the desk, right? Take the desk, chair, sit down, get the book, pound it around a bit, get it under control. And within 2 minutes, what? Thirsty, right? A little bit thirsty and a little bit hungry. Now, if you're a little bit thirsty and a little bit hungry, what's going to happen as time goes on?
You're going to go eat. You're going to forget about what you're doing.
You're going to forget about what you're studying, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get more hungry and more thirsty. It's going to be disastrous. So you better get that out of the way right away. So off you go to the fridge, and you open the fridge doors, and the many-hooked nature of food suddenly enters your brain. And you hadn't been using your memory techniques properly, and you'd forgotten the pie. You'd forgotten the cream, and you'd forgotten the drinks. And so you think, well, I'll just have a little kind of snack. So you have this giant meal, right? Really great meal. And you come back about 10, 10:30, not feeling quite so motivated and more guilty. And you think, well, I'll study till 12:30. Right? So you feel a little bit better, and you sink into the chair. And within 2 minutes, what?
You're tired.
You're getting tired. Because all that brain oxygen that you need up here is down here, digesting all that food. So you think, well, I can't put that kind of strain on my brain and body. I know that's not good for me. So what I'll do is I'll just watch television for a little while until it's all nice and digested and I'm nice and rested. And then I'll get down and study it. So you watch television, and within 10 minutes, what?
You fall asleep.
You're asleep, And members of the family come in, and there you are, right, when you're supposed to be studying, and they wake you up, and you think, well, I've had a hard day at school, hard day at work, I had a good meal, caught up on the news, phoned my buddy, read 2 sentences anyway. Tomorrow, at 6 o'clock, I'll really get down, and I'll study that book. And you go to bed feeling great. And I know some people have had the same books on their desk for 10 years, which they were going to study tomorrow. Now, has anybody here ever done anything like what I just did? 100%, right? And it's the same as me. I've done it as well. And why do we do it? How come we do this kind of great creative dance around the book? If you're worrying about your creativity, you don't have to worry about it. Just think of how many brilliant ideas you can think of for not doing the things you don't want to do. But why don't we study these books? How come? You want to do something more fun? Methods are wrong. It's terrifying. When we were talking about speed reading, I said we read between, say, 0 and 90 words a minute on study, 240 words a minute on ordinary material, and you've got books like this that you've got to study. And even if you're studying well, right, and you study for an hour, how much do you remember when you're studying for an hour if you don't review it? 5, 10, maybe even 20%. So you study for an hour, and you remember 20% of it, and it's hard anyway, then at the end of an hour, you've read this much. Right? You've read that much, and you've forgotten 80 to 90%. And you know, deep down in your brain, that you've got this much to go. Right? And you're going to forget 80 to 90% of that. So what's the point? May as well do something more enjoyable. So you do. And the truth of the matter is that if you know how to study, all of this becomes unnecessary because studying becomes easy, enjoyable, fast. You don't forget it, you remember it, you use it, your brain gets better. And what I'm going to do is teach you in 2 steps how to study properly. I'm going to teach you how to prepare for study properly, and then how to actually study a book properly. And I've devised a little mind map here on how to prepare for study. So I'm just going to move my desk to the side for a moment. And then take you through this mind map on how you can study. So what I'd like you to do is to have a little image in the center, which is preparing to study. And I'm going to show you step by step how you actually prepare yourself for studying a book. So the overall title here, Preparing to Study, and it gets really enjoyable studying. And the first big thing here is a thing called a browse. A browse. And what we've done on the mind map here is put a little clock with 15 minutes. The browse takes about 15 minutes. So the first thing you do in preparing to study a book is browse it. And I'm going to show you what I mean by browse. Browse means that I take my book and I use my guide. Remember I mentioned to you that when you're reading now, from now on, you can always use a guide. And a guide is best kind of a pen or pencil, some thin pointed object so your eyes can see around it and it doesn't block the print. And what you do in the browse is you look at the whole book. In this browse, it is the whole book. So make a little note somewhere that the browse is the whole book. What that means is you sit at your desk, using your guide. You can pretend you're in a library or a bookshop, checking whether you're going to take the book out or whether you're going to buy it. And using the guide, just as I am now, and I'll even sit to do it so you see the general style, I browse through the whole book at this kind of speed using my guide. This kind of speed. This is really fast checking what's in the whole book. This fast. Now in about 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to have checked every page in the book. What's the advantage of me doing that? Yeah, Angie.
After you're done doing that, and then when you go and you need to find something, you'll basically know what area it's in.
Yeah, perfectly phrased. If you've done that, and your brain wants to find something, it's already seen, photographed, roughly every page. So you'll know where it is. And you won't have that big black cloud of fear and ignorance of kind of what's coming next. Maybe it's something I don't know. So in 15 minutes, you've got the whole book under your control. So in preparing to study, first, you can put the number 1 here if you like, browse for about 15 minutes. Right? Now, as you are browsing, you're going to be seeing how many chapters there are in the book, what the pictures are like, how difficult it is, where the contents are, and all that kind of stuff. So you can start a mind map. So important on your note there, on the browse, in this 15 minutes, put M. You start your mind map. So you take a nice blank page like this one, put a little image in the center, a picture which summarizes what your book is all about, and you can start to put the major branches. And the major branches of your mind map will probably be what? Right. They'll be the chapters of the book. So already your brain is now getting in control of the book. Instead of this big threat, you've checked the whole thing, you've used the guide, which means your eyes are going to be alert, all your brain associations are going to be up there waiting for the new information, you've got the mind map under control. Then you can start to really plan your preparation. And the first thing you do is check your time. Now, how long do you think it takes the average student to read the average book? How long? 6 months, right? It's 6 months to a year. What you're going to be able to do is to do it in 6 days to 7 or 8 or 9 days and have the whole book done. And maybe even faster than that. So you check the book and you say, well, this book's probably going to take me maybe 4 days. 4 days. So you've checked your time. And we've got here memory. You want more memory. And you want to read your book so that you remember. Now, if you recall when we were talking about memory, what did we say about time when you're studying? How should you sort out your time? Study for 5 hours with no break? Right. 30 to 40 minutes or an hour and then a break. And then 30 to 40 minutes, an hour. So at this stage in your preparation, you're sorting out your memory, you're taking breaks, you're organizing your time, and you're deciding how long it's going to take. So you've got the book all browsed, you've got your mind map started, and you now divide your time. And you take your breaks, you know you're going to get more highs and lows. Sorry, more highs and fewer lows. You're going to get your associations going, your emphasis going. So when you've organized your time, you can then organize the book. Now what I recommend here is that you actually take slips of paper, and I'm going to demonstrate this just to make sure it gets into your brain. Take paper and you tear it into strips. And it's a good idea to actually tear it so that when you're preparing, your brain is hearing the sound. Right? You're actually doing something physical. Because what these strips are going to be are things that are going to divide the book into easy sections so you can divide and conquer the book. So you get your strips of paper, and these you are going to put in the book. Now, where are you going to put them? In the main topics. Anytime there's a big main topic, you put in a divider. Are you going to put anything on the divider? Yeah, what you put a keyword or a key picture. Almost like a little linear mind map through the book. Where else are you going to put these dividers? Yeah, every chapter, beginning of the chapter, put in the dividers. Where else are you going to put the dividers?
Where you stopped reading.
Where are you going to stop and start? Good point. This is your time management up here, and if you think, well, I'm going to study for 40 minutes, you say, well, in this particular time I'll be starting here, and I know I can do about 30 pages because I'm now a skilled reader, so I'll be stopping here. Right? So you put these dividers in the important places, in the time divisions, tables of contents, important things that you want to look up like graphs, and you've then divided and conquered your book. Instead of having to read 10 pages and knowing you've still got 400 to go, you've set yourself 40 and you've done 40. And that gives you what? Organization, confidence, motivation. So the second stage here is the amount, that's the whole book. And we've written here, you divide and conquer. You divide the book and then you can conquer it. Here our artist has drawn markers. That's these, right? The things you put in the book. And you put the markers in the table of contents. We've got a really good witty mind mapper here. The table of contents, in the glossaries, in the appendixes, in the chapters, etc. Put it at the beginning of the book and the end of the book. So you know immediately where the front is and the back is. And then you're really getting in control of this thing. Really in control. All the time you've been adding to your mind map. And at this stage, you've looked through all the book, you've divided it, you've sorted out your time, got mind map nicely building up. Then you check. You say to your brain, what do I already know about this subject? And you take a separate page and you do a really speedy mind map, really fast on everything you already know. Now what's the advantage of checking what you know before you get deeply into the study? What's going to happen in your brain if you check associations and linking? If you sit there for 5 minutes saying, what do I know about this subject? Your brain's hooks are all going to be out there grabbing, and you're going to be thinking about the subject instead of about the apple pie and the newspaper and the television and all the things you don't want to think about. So you check with a review. This is your third stage. You review everything you know about that subject on a mind map. your mind map here, you're checking your knowledge. You're checking the knowledge of the subject. We've got a submarine here, jacked. Check the subject. And make it quick. So you take a nice little mind map and you whip out of your brain everything you know. That gets all your associations going. And how many associations have you got in your brain anyway? Millions, right? On most subjects you've got, do you think you've got more or less than you normally think on most subjects? More, right? Usually you've got more. So you check what you know, this review, and you suddenly find you know more than you thought. What's that going to do? It's going to help. It's going to boost your confidence. You're going to think, hey, I already know this better than I thought. So if you know more, you're going to be able to read the book faster or slower? Faster, right? Because you already know it, or a lot of it. So you now get to your fourth stage here, and that is your goals. Your goals. And what you're really doing here is saying, why am I reading this book? what am I doing sitting at this desk with this mind map all ready and all this stuff to go? What do I want from it? What are my goals? And you set your left and right brain. You set the whole brain. What kind of images do I want from this book? What kind of words and numbers? What kind of names? What kind of pictures do I want in my brain from this book? So you ask yourself a whole pile of questions. Who wrote the book? Who are the main characters? Who are the main scientists? What is the book all about anyway? What's this going to do to help me? Where did the book take place? Where did the experiment take place? Where did the events in the book take place? How does the author build up the information? How am I going to connect this to my exam? How am I going to connect this to helping the family? Why did this theory come up? Why did so-and-so in the plot poison somebody else's food? All these questions help your brain to get the information out. Now, just to show you how important that is and how good your brain is at setting itself, if I said to you, in this book, which I'm going to ask you all to read, on page 372, there is a sentence. And that sentence says, the dog ran out of the house and across the road and into the neighbor's garden. And it's totally, completely, absolutely unimportant. When you get to that sentence, you don't even have to notice it. I don't even want you to think about it when you get to that sentence on page 271 or whatever. When you got to that sentence, what would your brain do? Look right at it and you say, ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding, that's the sentence he told you not to look at. And the same thing happens if you set yourself for these things. If you're reading a book and you say to your brain, I want you to remember or notice the names in this book. The minute there's a name, it'll go ding-a-ding-a-ding, look at that. And you'll actually see it more clearly. And then you can add it to your mind map. So the preparation of your study material is really easy, really enjoyable, really fast, really confidence boosting. You browse the whole thing quickly. You organize your time. Start building up your mind map. You divide and conquer the amount. You review everything you know, which tells you what you know and tells you what you don't know. And what you don't know becomes part of your goals. You say, well, I don't know that, so I want to find out that. You set your whole brain and you ask all these questions. And that's all there is to preparation. But when you think about it in the context, it's almost as if we've finished the book already, isn't it? And what else is there to do? We know what we know the whole book's outline, we've got the whole thing mind mapped in general form. So all you've got to do next is actually go through a fairly simple process of getting the information out of the book. And I'm going to give you a second mind map, so I'd like you to turn to page 2 in your notes. And this mind map is going to be on how to study, how actually to get your brain wrapped around that book. And you'll find that it's as easy or even easier than the preparation. I want you to imagine that you are the world's champion jigsaw puzzle doer. I mean, you are the best person at doing jigsaw puzzles on the planet. And your best friend comes along and said, here is the most amazing jigsaw puzzle. And you're standing on your front door, and in this box that your friend has given you is the most complicated, brilliant jigsaw puzzle ever. And your friend's wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with ribbons. And you stand there and you think, boy, amazing. I'm going to start this, and I'm going to keep going until I finish. Now, what are the tiny things, step by step, that you do? You're standing on your front doorstep, got this jigsaw puzzle in the box all wrapped up. What are the things you do, minute, tiny, step by step, from standing here to finishing the puzzle? Go in the house, right? So the first thing you do is you go in the house. Next?
Put it on the table.
Put it on the table. Put it on the table.
Pour it out.
Unwrap it.
Pour it out. You got a whole thing wrapped up in paper.
Unwrap it.
Unwrap it. Okay. So I've now unwrapped it, put my paper away. I got this big box on the table.
Open the box.
Open the box.
Take some of the pieces out.
Look at the picture. see what you're going to do. Right, so you look at the picture. Open, yeah, Megan?
Then get all the edge pieces.
So you look at the picture and you dive in and you get all the edge pieces. Do you?
Well, I think you turn them upside down, or right side.
So you got the box here, so you open the box and then you turn all the pieces upside
Dump
down.
out.
Dump them out. So you dump them out all over the floor.
On the table.
On the what table?
That table.
This table.
The table that you put it on.
The table that I put it on. So I dump them out on the table that I put it on. Is that a good idea? How big is the table that I put it on? How do you know that?
Get a table that's big enough.
Get a table that's big enough. How do you know if the table's big enough?
You look at the picture.
Read the directions, right? It's always a good idea to read the directions. You know, if you've got this giant jigsaw puzzle, you dump it all out on a little table, you know, you're halfway through and it all starts to dribble off the edge. So you read the directions, check how big it is, look at the picture, then you find the table, then you dump it out, then what? Right, it's now dumped out, you've got the right size table, what next?
Turn them all.
Turn them all the right side up, then what?
Get all the edge pieces.
Get all the edge pieces, then what?
Then find some pieces that match the edge pieces.
Right, pieces that match the edge pieces, so you're sorting out the edges, putting the edge pieces together, all the color areas together, so it's all starting to come together, and then what?
How interesting.
What next? All the pieces together? You start to fill in, don't you? You just fill in. And if you come to a difficult piece, what do you do with it? Put it aside. I mean, you don't take a pair of scissors and say, well, look, you know, it doesn't fit here, but I'd like it to, so we'll just snip it in, right? You put it to the side. Why do you put it to the side? Yeah, you're going to come back to it and it's going to fit in easier, isn't it? Now that's the way everybody does basically a jigsaw puzzle, and that's all you need to do with a book. Same thing. But the way we read books, we start on page 1. And we won't read page 2 until we read page 1. That's like kind of having blindfold on, sticking your hand in the box, taking out a piece, putting it on the table, and trying to find the next piece. So what you do when you're studying a book is build it up like a jigsaw puzzle. And what we've got here is a mind map on how to build up your study book like a jigsaw puzzle. And the first thing you do, number 1, is overview. That means you have an overview, a look at the whole book. And it's really easy to remember how to do that because it's browse number 2. It's exactly the same as the first browse. You're sitting down, you've got your guide, you're going through that book fairly fast, this kind of speed, but now you already know what's in it. And now you know what you want out. Now you've got your dividers in, and your mind map started. So this time when you're browsing, you can build up the mind map as you go, put in other markers. You might even take some markers out because they're no longer necessary. So you're browsing again, checking that whole book, building up your mind map. So you browse, you use the guide always. The guide, good for your eyes, speeds up the comprehension, all those kinds of things. In this browse and in the overview, you check the summaries, right? At the ends of chapters it will say summary or conclusion. Now why check those? What's going to be in the summaries and conclusions? Most important things you need to know. All the main stuff is going to be in there, right? So you check those. You're not trying to play hide and seek with the knowledge in the book, are you? You're not trying to escape from all the knowledge. So you go straight into where it all is. Summaries, conclusions, contents. You pick out the key words. The key, got a little head here, the key headings. Because you're going to have in your book headings. And the headings will be key words, key information, stuff you really need to know. You check in here the key graphs. Any important graphs. And you can put markers in where there's an important graph. And you can even put the little graph on your marker, stick it in the book. And what's going to happen every time your brain sees that little graph on the marker? Association, review. James? Yeah, it's actually going to graph it in your head. So the markers themselves are helping you study. And then we also have in here pictures. Any pictures that are in the book you check during this overview. And this is where you are building up the edges of this jigsaw puzzle and getting those color areas sorted out. And you're mind mapping as you go. So the mind map's building up and up, which means the picture in your head is building up and up. You're using speed reading techniques, you're taking breaks, so you're memorizing more in the breaks, and then you move on to the next stage, which is the preview. And in the preview, really simply, all you do is look, again using your guide, at the beginnings and ends of the chapters, beginnings and ends of the divisions, beginnings and ends of the book. Why check the beginnings and ends? What's probably going to be in the beginnings and ends? Right, the most important information. Most writers say at the beginning of a chapter, for example, in this chapter I'm going to make out the following 5 main points and try to draw the following conclusions from them. And at the end of the chapter they say, as can now be seen, the 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, lead us to the obvious conclusion that blah, 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 blah. So the ends and the beginnings and the ends are worth checking, because there's usually a lot of information in there. So the preview is where you check the chapter beginnings and the ends. And it's where you organize. Right? So you're, in terms of your overall jigsaw puzzle, you're now starting to connect the colors, put in little connection points, and so on and so forth. Which then brings you to the third stage. And in terms of your jigsaw puzzle, you've now got the edges, you know what the picture's like already, you know what the size is like, you've got your mind map going, in other words, you're filling it in, you come to the in view, and this is where you are filling in the things you don't already have. So we've got filling the details. This is details. And you see here how Linda, who's done this mind map, is really using left and right brain imagination, makes it a lot easier to remember. Instead of just filling in the details in a sentence. You fill in the details. Except for one thing. When you're reading a book, and you're now in the in-view stage, and the mind map's really building up, you've got it all under control, and you come to a difficult part, what should you do? Skip it for a while and move on. Now, a lot of people think, no, I better work that out and solve it. What's wrong with doing that? Yeah? Yeah, it's time-consuming. Megan?
Not remember what was in the beginning before that.
Yeah. You might start forgetting all the stuff that you've been really moving on with. It gets depressing to suddenly get stuck in a problem. So in the same way with the jigsaw puzzle, what do you do with the difficult part? Put it aside, come back later because it's easier. Difficult part in the book, put in a little marker, put it aside. Often you'll find that on the next 3 pages, the problem's solved anyway. Sometimes you'll find that if you've looked at a problem and you've left it in your brain will be doing what while you're reading something else? Solving it, sorting it out. So you in view, filling in the details, the difficult sections, you move on. Just mark them and move on, because you come back to them later. That then leads you to the last stage in study, and that is the review. Right? Because you've now basically got your jigsaw puzzle filled up, your mind map is beautifully completing itself, you're solving the difficulties, so in the review, you do a mind map and you complete it. Right? You are now finishing your mind map of the book. You might also be finishing mind maps of separate chapters if those chapters are really important and deserve a separate mind map. You might even be looking at your first mind map, which is a bit messy perhaps because you've just been going through so fast, and doing another neater, more organized mind map. In this review stage, you check any remaining difficulties. You know, you've marked the difficulties, you go and check them, solve them. You will find that at the review stage, 80% of the things you have marked as difficulties are no longer difficult. You've only got 20% of difficulties which you need to pay attention to, and so you do at this stage. The next thing you do as a general principle is 2 major things. You select, select and reject. You select and reject. And you can do these 2 things here throughout the entire study. You definitely obviously select and reject at the end, but you can do these right through the study. Now selection, right, when your brain starts to select, is going to make you study faster. And you select what you want to study in the goals stage. So on your mind map there, on select, you can put in a little bracket the goals. Because when you are sorting out your goals, that is your brain selecting, saying, I want this, 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 and it will get it. The rejection is, it seems more difficult, but it's actually easier and it's really important. Throughout the entire study, reject means go really fast over. Doesn't mean just skip the pages altogether, but it means read really fast, this kind of speed, whipping down the page at this kind of speed. Thousands of words a minute using your guide, because here you're just checking stuff that you don't really need to spend time on. And the things you can reject are the irrelevant. Irrelevant means doesn't connect to your goals. If you wanted the names of certain people and certain theories, and it's talking about something else, then you don't have to read it. You move on to where your goals are. Another thing you can speed over is the illogical. Linda's drawn here an ill person, logical. If something is illogical, if the book isn't making sense, if the arguments are false, you can read over them really fast. Because if they're illogical, you don't want to remember all that. The next you can reject is, this is padding. These little pads with a frog jumping on them, lily pads. Now padding in a book means where the writer is going on and on and on and on and on and on, and it's just getting boring. For example, if they say, here is the theory, here's the information, and here are 25 examples. And you understand the information, you can make up your own examples. Do you need to read all those 25 examples? No, of course not. Right? So you reject them. And the other thing you can reject is the things you already know. Anything you already know, you can reject. And that's the hardest of all to reject. Because when you're reading something, if you already know it in study, why do you want to keep reading that? To review? Somebody just said it. It's easy. Right? Study is nearly always hard. You suddenly get to the section that you know. And you think, boy, I know this. Gee, I'm smart. Oh boy, yeah, yes, I know that. And you read and read for 50, 60 pages, patting yourself on the back saying, boy, aren't I smart? I know all this. It's the only time you get 100% comprehension. But if you're a good reader, a good studier, like this technique is teaching you to be, and you get the stuff you know, what should you do? Yes, skim over it. Just check, hey, I know that. I know this. Use your guide. I know this. I know that. I know this. The key words will be going in as review anyway, and you'll be really powering on through the book. If you do this, your study speed will increase by 4 to 10 times. But as I said earlier, you'll be eating books for breakfast. I mean, really, really easy. And the more you build up, the more you know. And I want you to emphasize that word here on your mind map. The more you know, the more easy it is to know more. So if you study a book, you get it all done, and then you come to study the next book, is the next book going to be easier or more difficult? Easier, right? So you then read that book using the mind map technique and the speed reading and all this study technique and your memory and management of time. So you've got 2 books under your belt. When you come to the 3rd book, how's that going to be?
Easy.
Even easier, right? So the more you read, the more easy it gets, and every book you read faster and faster. Your brain gets more associations, memory works better, you get better as you get older, everything starts to improve. So now we've got a couple of questions before we move on to the next really exciting stage, which is how you can take all this and do it even 4 times faster than the 4 times faster I've just shown you. You think how much faster you're getting than the average student, average family member. Most people read 0 to 90 words a minute, 2 pages a month, forget most of it, and you're already speed reading 4 times faster, memorizing 2 to 3 times better, organizing your study technique and approach 5 times better, reviewing 3 times better, so you're already up to 20, 30, 40 times better than the average student. And you still haven't got there yet, because there's another technique which multiplies all that by 4, which we're going to do next. But just before we do that, I want to ask you a couple of serious questions about this technique. Would you use this technique for studying or reading a novel? No. How many people say you wouldn't? How many people say you would? Another 50-50 debate. People say, well, you shouldn't use this technique for reading a novel because then you can't appreciate it. Now, what appreciating a novel often means is kind of sitting in your comfy chair, nice cozy winter day, you're inside with a fire and your drink or whatever, and you have a nice little read of the novel. What you are appreciating there is your relaxation, fireplace, the drink, your daydreaming, and the nice rhythm of the words. Is that okay or not? Yeah, that's great. Are you appreciating the structure of the novel, the philosophy, the build-up of the characters, the comparisons of the characters, themes, sub-themes, character development in terms of personality and psychology, comparison with other novels? No. If you wanted to do that, in other words, to study a novel really for an examination purpose, would you use this technique? Absolutely. You go through the novel at one speed, picking out some kind of information, overview it for more information, build up mind maps on the characters, mind maps on the themes, mind maps on the plot, and you would have that book totally. But getting even more serious, what about detective stories? This technique says here, look at the ends and summaries first. So you're going to use it on a detective story? No. Who says no? Who says yeah? So you're going to look at the end first? How many people here read the end of the detective stories first? Hey, great, right? In some classes, when people say, yeah, you know, I read the end of the detective stories first, we nearly get into punch-ups. People say, hey, you can't do that. You know, that's not what they're written for. You're supposed to wait till the end to find out. But why do you, those of you who read the end first, why do you read it first? Suspense, right? Suspense, actually, when many people read the end first, their suspense is every page to see if they can figure out what's going to happen next. And it's just as suspenseful. So you can even use the approach on detective stories, mystery stories, whatever. Next and final serious question. How many people here read to help themselves go to sleep? Anybody here read in bed to help yourself go to sleep? Yeah, about 60% of us. Now, you're going to use the technique there. You're going to kind of get into bed, say, okay, now we've learned about using the guide, get the mind map pad by the side of the pillows here, get all the pens out, use a nice speedy technique, help me go to sleep. So are you going to use the technique to help you go to sleep? Yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. And I'll tell you why. Because the technique isn't doing all the things in the order that I've said them. The technique is knowing how your brain works, knowing how you study, knowing how your eyes work, knowing how the memory works, knowing how to set goals. And what's the goal when you're in bed with the book? To go to sleep. So how are you going to use your knowledge of this technique to help you go to sleep? Yeah. Are you going to use a guide? Certainly not. Why not? It's too quick, right? And it keeps your eyes going nice and smoothly and keeps you wet, so you certainly don't use that. Are you going to have the book nice and far away so you get all that good vision going on? Certainly not. Where are you going to have it?
Close.
Up nice and close, right? You're going to have nice bright light so you can see clearly what's going on here? No, have a nice little dim light so it's a little bit of a strain. You're going to use a really exciting, intriguing book to keep you alert and attentive?
No.
What kind of book?
Boring.
Boring or fantasy book, right? Because a fantasy book's going to do what?
Don't make a difference.
Going to take your mind off everything, going to get you daydreaming, which is close to night dreaming, which is close to sleeping, right? Are you going to read really fast, taking in all these words in groups? No, what are you going to do?
Read slow.
Nice and slow, word by word, right? And within about 2 seconds, you're going to be asleep. And I know some people who've been on the same page for 6 months. And is that good reading or is it not?
It's good reading if you go to sleep.
If you want to go to sleep, is that good reading or not?
Yeah.
That's brilliant, right? I mean, brilliant reading. You're using all your knowledge of how your brain works to make sure you accomplish your goal. So knowing all this means you can read 1 page in 6 months and accomplish the goal. It also means you can read 1 book in a single day and accomplish the goal, depending on how you use the skills you got. Now, what I mentioned before is that using these techniques, you get multiple times the advantage of the average reader. The next thing we're going to talk about after the next little break is how you can combine your family groups, how you can work with the people in your family, and maybe the people in your offices, your friends, people in school, to multiply what you've already done by 4, 5, even 10 times more. And we'll do that after the next little break. The break starts now. We're now going to talk about how, by working as members of a family group or a friendship group, you can actually study 4 times better than the 20 you're already doing. And I'm now going to take you through the step-by-step process of family study, and if there is anything I recommend from this seminar that you do, this is it. This is it. So in the center of your mind map, we have a picture of the family studying. And we've used a kind of standard average family of mum and dad or parents and 2 children. We've got a cat in here studying as well. We're getting on into animal intelligence in the next series of tapes, so here we're going to be concentrating on the human beings. Now, the first thing that the family study group does is organize the time. We've talked about time a lot before in terms of the management of it, making sure your memory is good. But the first thing I want to talk about here is the days when the family studies. And the family develops a special thing, develop it as a group together, called the study day. The study day. And you devote a whole day to studying in the way that I've explained so far, with extra things that I'm going to add in this particular talk. As a family, you manage the time in the way we've talked about, making sure that in your study day, you have those study periods and breaks, study periods and breaks, study periods and breaks. So you get high point during the break, high point, another high point during the break, high point, so that each member of the family has a memory which is getting better and better on whatever it is you're studying. And you decide on a special time when you're going to start. Now, before I get involved in the study day itself, we want to talk about what is the family going to study? What material is the family going to study? Now, the best thing to start studying in terms of your family groups is the school material of the children in the family. So you study the school material. Which brings me to my first question. How many books is the average student in school supposed to read every year? Roughly. Roughly how many are you supposed to read? 5? Yeah, somewhere between about 5, 10, 11, 12 for each person. How many do they actually read? Supposed to read 5 to 12. How many do you actually read? 2. You got it. The average student actually reads 2. But we're going to be really optimistic here and assume that the students are totally concentrated, absolutely dedicated, and they're going to study 10. And in the average family, we've got two students, 2 children, 10 books. So 10 times 2 is what? 20. So we've got 20 books to study. The family has 20 books to study. Now, in most previous situations, if you said, all right, family, here's 20 books, study them, everybody would collapse with a heart attack and say, we can't, it's impossible, and so on. But now you can begin to see that it's fairly easy. All you've got to do is study 20 books as a family, applying that organic study technique that we just finished talking about. And you study the books in a group. You study them as a group, a friendship family group. And I'm now going to take you through how you study these school books, 20 of them, in a family group, a friendship group, which brings us back to the start of the study day. And a study day is an amazing day. It starts off at this line here and continues. And we're going to start at the beginning. The study day starts with dance or music or exercise, table tennis, swimming, jogging together, whatever, some kind of exercise. What's the point of a study day starting with family group exercise? What's the point of that? To which? Yeah, to make you alert. It's going to get oxygen going into the brain. It's going to get your connections all going. It's going to get your muscles relaxed, blood flowing around, so you're going to be ready for the book. So study starts with exercise, which already makes it a slightly nicer concept. After the exercise, you then do the browse. The browse where each one of you sits. Each one of you, say in this family group of 4 here, has a separate book. So on this first study day, you've got 4 books, and each member has a different book. So you sit around on a big table, or on your 4 separate tables, and you say, go! And then in the 15, 20, 30 minutes, you do the browse, where you whip through the whole book, checking it, starting off your mind map, and then you stop and do what? Break. You're right on here, on good form. You break, and what are you going to do in the breaks as a family? Which? Exercise, right? Rest, listen to music, anything different from the study. And then you come back, and each one of you on his or her own book does the preparation stage. That's where you're getting your time, amount, what you already know, and your goals all set out. And that will take approximately 30 to 60 minutes. So each one of you now, on your own separate book, has got the mind map started, you've got the time organized for your book, got your markers in, you've got your little mind map done on what you already know, you've got your goals set. So everybody in the family on his or her own book is ready to go. And so then you do what? After that 30 or 40 minutes? Another break, in which you play, dance, rest, go for little walks, whatever. Then you come back, and you have the first doing section. That's where you are actually now building up the jigsaw puzzle. So you're sitting there with your guide, each one of you with his or her own book, and you're actually now building up the puzzle, getting the edges, sorting out the color areas, starting to fill in, and reviewing. So you're doing the doing section here for about 40 minutes, and then you do what? Break again. Same kind of things in the break. And then you come back, and you have another 40 or 50 minutes filling in the jigsaw puzzle. And then you do what? Break again. Right. And then you can have, this one can be a big break. You might take a 2 or 3 hour break, 1 or 2 hour break, where everybody just goes off and does their own thing. And during that time, what's going to be happening inside your head with what you've already studied? Integrating. So in these nice big breaks, you don't have to worry that you're forgetting it all. You're actually remembering more. And you come back from that nice big break refreshed, and you have another doing session. Another break. Another doing session. And then you just start to look at this and begin to see what's happening to this family group. We started the day with dance, exercise, getting the brain and body all organized. We then had a browse on the book, 15, maybe 30 minutes. We then had a preparation, each person on his or her own book, 40 minutes. Then doing, 40 minutes. Doing again, 40 minutes. Another break where it all integrates. Doing, 40 minutes. Doing, 40 minutes. Now spending all that time using the guide, using mind maps, managing your memory, using left and right brain, how much do you think in 30 plus 40 plus 40 plus 40 plus 40 plus 40 minutes, how much of the average 200-page book are you going to have got in by that time? Michelle? 300%, right? How much of the book are you going to get in? Yeah, about 90%. And if it's really unfortunate, it's going to be 60%. So at the end of this study day, each one of the four of you is going to have got 60 to 90 and maybe even 300% of the book that you're studying. Now, when most people finish a book in a normal, old-fashioned way of studying, how much do they have? What percentage do they have? 25, right? 25 to 50% of really hard slog for 6 months. And here in a day, you've got 60 to 90%. So we can put that on. At this stage, each person has 60 to 90%. That's a lot. And it's one day. And that 60 to 90% is all going to be neatly noted on what? How did you guess? On a mind map. So you've now got each member of the family, right? The two children, the two parents, has got a mind map with 60 to 90% of a book. And this is where you get to the exciting, enormous multiplication stage of what you can do. Because you take a break, and then you exchange. So, daughter stands up in front of the family and says, all right, Mum, Dad, and brother, I'm going to tell you what was in my book. And from her mind map, she tells, exactly the way I'm telling you from this mind map, everything that she studied in the book. And while she's telling that, what are the mum, dad, and brother going to be doing? Adding their mind map. So they end up with a mind map of her book. So she then finishes saying that, and then up stands brother, and he says, this is my mind map on my book. And sister and mum and dad do what? While he's explaining? Mind map. Now, while they are mind mapping, how much, let's say it's sister who's standing up there saying, this is what I got from my book. And mum, dad, and brother are taking mind maps of what she's saying. How much are they going to get of what she is giving them? If they're mind mapping it?
All of it.
All of it. Because she's saying, here's my mind map, and she's saying all of it. So they are going to get everything she got. And then up gets mum, and she says, this is what I've got. And dad and daughter and son are noting in mind map form, and they get everything from mum. And then dad stands up, and he does it, and it only takes 15, 20, maximum 30 minutes to tell your family a whole book. So at the end of the exchange period, how many books of information are in the daughter's head? 4. How many books are in the son's head? 4. How many in mum's head? 4. How many in dad's head? 4. Right? And how long did it take? How long did that whole process to get 4 books in your head take? A day. And how many books does the average student read in a year? 2. So in one day, studying as a friendship family group, you got twice as much as most students get in a year. And have you remembered more than most students remember in a year on each of those books? Yes. Have you got it in a note-taking form which is going to enable you to review it better than all the other students? Yes. And how many books are there in your entire school year? 10. And if you've got a family with 2, how many days is it going to take to get all the 20 books in every one of the heads in the family at 60 to 90%. How many days? 5 days. So in 5 days, everybody in the family has 2 years' worth of school. Because the daughter has now also got her brother's school year. And the brother has also got the daughter's school year. So in 5 days, you get 2 years' worth of school's information. And instead of the normal kind of situation, I just get a little book here, where parents trying to help their children to study or prepare for exams are kind of opening the book and saying, well, what's on page 243? And the child is under stress and the parent isn't learning anything. Instead of that kind of thing, what's happening here is that everyone is learning. Now, if everyone in your family is learning the same information, what's going to start to happen in your conversations? Huh? What are you going to be talking about?
Things of common interest.
Things of common interest, which are going to be what? The things you're studying. So as a family, you are going to be constantly talking about the information, exchanging it, reviewing it, using it, and you can do that even more well by building up a family knowledge book. A family knowledge book. You take a big folder with rings in it, and what you do is, all of you collect newspaper clippings, magazine clippings, special articles, photographs, or whatever that relate to your subjects. And you build up this knowledge book, which means that not only are you studying all the information in school and having all the books done in 5 days, you are also at the same time getting information from the rest of the world which connects to the subjects that are being studied. So when the children then come to the examinations, are the examinations going to be easy or hard? I mean easy, aren't they? How much are you going to know roughly of the exam questions? 100% and more, because you're going to know not only the stuff you do in school, you're going to know the stuff the other members in the family have been studying, you're going to know all the stuff from the knowledge book here, and it becomes easier and easier and easier. What then begins to happen is that these study days become totally different from normal studying. Normal studying, as we said earlier, is kind of hard, boring, difficult, failure, exams, problems, slow, that kind of thing. Here, it becomes easy, fast, delightful. 2 years' worth of schoolwork done in 5 days. Everybody exchanging information. As the children exchange the information, it's preparing them for writing examinations, for answering questions verbally. It's doing everything the brain needs to do to get first class, first class, first class, first class. And at the end of these study days, you finish the exchange, you've all given each other the mind maps, what do you then do? What should you do after you've exchanged the information on the books? Eat, right? That's just about it. Celebrate. Give yourself a giant treat. I mean, you know, you've worked together as a family for a whole day, you've had a good time, you've had breaks, you've learned 4 books worth of information, you've got magnificent mind maps. You celebrate. Go to the ball game, go to a special restaurant, play with each other, whatever you particularly want to do together as a family, treat yourselves. Is that part of the study? Yeah, absolutely. Why is it part? What's your brain going to be doing while you're treating yourselves? Integrating, thinking, organizing all the 4 books of information you've got to do. So your study day ends as you go to sleep, and it doesn't even end then. Because as you sleep, what's your brain going to be doing? Thinking, dreaming, integrating, organizing. And the only problem that we've ever discovered with these study days is what, do you think? The only problem with starting off family study days.
They don't want to stop.
They don't want to stop. It becomes like ice cream, right? Kids will say, hey, come on, let's have another study day, let's have another study day, another study day. The family becomes a group of friends who are themselves working together in learning. The parents are stimulating their brains, which is helping them get increasingly good as they get older. Everybody's working together. They become friends. And the key image that summarizes all this that you can put on your mind map is a big heart. Because the family becomes a group of friends who increasingly love each other, who work together, who learn together, who play together, who enjoy treats together, and who make what used to be a really hard, boring task a total delight, an absolute total delight.